What is going on, peeps? It is your boy, Mighty Fine, back for the first week of February weekly analysis. Before we get into it, give me a thumbs up, share this with your friends. I'm dropping fire for free. 96.7% of people by the numbers like what I put out. And for the one person that keeps giving me a thumbs down, I love you too. It's okay. Got to have a yin for a yang, right? Anyways, entering this new month, kind of a short month, right? A couple days shorter. Just be aware that our first day of this week is January 31st, and I do not personally trade the last day of the month. Generally, I see a lot of price fixing. I see weird volatility, stuff like that, categorically over the past. So, with all that being said, if you don't already subscribe, make sure you do. Check out the video I posted just today on Price Action Basics 101. I think it's going to be really helpful for everybody. I appreciate you guys and your support, and I want to keep dropping gems for you. I'm seeing growth on the channel, which is awesome. I want to reach more people. There's so much bullshit out there, right? There's so much BS from all these fake gurus, the furus, and other people that are making you pay so much for their interpretation of basic principles. So I'm dropping some tutorials. I'm dropping some things for you guys on the free because, this shit should be easy to access and easy to learn, and you should have somebody who can actually teach you these concepts, teaching you these concepts. So if I got to be that guy, I'm gonna be that guy. All right. So anyways, without further ado, this week, weekly analysis, we're going to look at the US dollar, AU, GU, GJ, EU, EJ, and I'm not going to do gold, but that's just on my list anyways for my weekly analysis. So yeah, I've got these all marked up. We're just going to kind of walk through them, big high time frame ideas. If you watch that Price Action 101 basics, you'll understand a lot of what I'm doing. I'm going to drop another one here either this week or next, which I think is going to be really helpful as well for establishing your immediate directional biases, how to, figure out which direction to trade in. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with the US dollar, and you can see I'm on this big ass time frame, right? Big up on the high time frame. What do we see? Well, last week, I said I saw that it was bullish overall, and I would be kind of surprised if we got this bullish expansion. And I have to eat my words on that one because we got this huge push to the upside, right? The market, the US dollar is super strong, which is crazy. Anyways. So very, very bullish price action. We see this expansion of the trend to the upside. So clearly this time frame is telling us bullish, 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 right? This is our weekly most recent trend push and our daily leg when we get back down into it, right here. And essentially what you're looking for now is a pullback relative to this trend expansion. So some sort of pullback relative to this darker gray box. And that could happen in a couple of spots, right? Most immediately, we want to pay attention to our H4 demand because we're in an uptrend. Most immediately, we want to look at that. I've marked out the H4 leg. We'll look at that in a second. Second, daily demand right here. We can see there's a lot of volume put in as well. So this would be a second area. And then obviously the start of this expansion leg would be your weekly demand, this green zone down here on the bottom. And that would be the third sort of area of interest. So really what you're looking for at this point is you're looking for a flow switch. So maybe like this H4 demand, if it were to break to the downside, it would show you that that retracement has started and we might pull back into one of these areas. So you kind of got to just sit and wait. Now, what happens if it just moves sideways and keeps on going? We got nothing to do, right? If that is the case, then maybe we'll look for the same situation, a flow switch and a pullback. But this gray box, this high time frame trend would be extending upwards at that point. So keep that in mind. We need a pullback. We need to see, a little bit of profit taking from all these dollar bulls, and then maybe some new orders coming in and expansion to the upside if this trend is going to continue. Now, the other thing that we need to be really aware of is on our highest time frames, are we coming into any interesting areas up here that we should pay attention to? I think so, yes. Let's go back to the weekly because we need a little bit more detail here. Areas that I would suggest that you watch are going to be roughly this area right over here, and then, you know, really just these high time frame supplies that created this big pivot to the downside. Now we're already in an interesting area right here, and if we can break above sort of this supply that gave us this whole big leg to the downside, really started this flow here, I think we're going to see an even bigger bullish explosion. But I would treat that as an area of interest or a pocket of liquidity as price comes into it. So keep that in mind. I'm going to mark that out with dark gray or blackish, and then we'll do something like this. Here we go. And we'll say, you know, liquidity pocket. And I want to put the time frame just to stay super organized weekly. There we go. So if price moves up into that, like for example, if it were to just keep going sideways, like we just talked about, we may see it come up into here, tap, and then start its reversal. Totally possible. If instead we get that reversal, that pullback, and then, you know, we get some order flow continuing to build up into that, I would just treat that as an area where sellers might step in or buyers might take some profit. And if price comes into that, if you're trading based on this dollar analysis, just be aware that you may get a little bit of a jump or a pivot from that level. It's possible. It's not a science, right? You can't just call out tops and bottoms like that, but it is an interesting high time frame liquidity area. So keep that in mind. Overall, trade with your flow, guys. You're going to be way more profitable and consistent and accurate if you just trade with your weekly and daily and H4 flow, mainly your H4 and your daily flow. But, you know, stick with that. And when you have pockets like this, just be aware of them. So that's that for the dollar. I'm looking for a pullback. I expect bullish continuation at this point because we busted through these higher highs, this weekly supply, right? Popped right through it. We actually came right into that supply level that we were talking about at the beginning of last week. Rejected a little bit. We had some of these little like equal highs right here, and we see that buyers just sent it, right, and exploded to the upside. Lots of news last week, FOMC, lots of Fed talk. So, you know, it was a speculative week. It was the end of the month. Hopefully you guys kept your shirts, but, you know, we'll get back on the horse. Anyways, let's move on to AU. Same deal. Let's look at the high time frame first. Now, this was a very interesting spot. I've highlighted this a couple of times. This was, in my eyes, a weekly higher low, and it was honored once. We took an amazing trade off of this level, my group and I did, and now it's been broken. So that's invalidated completely. That's out of the question. And I've marked out that weekly break of structure here for you. So just a little context for you, right? Now, on a lower time frame, these arrows look pretty messy, but on a lower time frame, you'll see that I'm just indicating my bias for you, what might play out. This gray box represents your daily bearish leg. We need to see, much like our dollar analysis, some sort of pullback relative to this to look for bearish continuation opportunities. Right now, my high time frame bias is pointing down. As I go into the 4-hour, I started to highlight some levels and zones that I'm interested in. We have this H4 immediate supply. If this level were to be broken, this would mark the beginning of your retracement flow. Then I would pay attention to this overall H4 leg that I have marked out for you here, the top of that supply that gave us this big push to the downside. We have a break or bounce situation there. If it goes down, we're looking for bearish order flow to break past our lower low and expand the trend. If it goes above, I would anticipate we will retest the daily supply region up here. Pretty simple, right? Break or bounce. If it goes above, then we start to look for maybe a change of bias. Maybe we're starting to consider some longs. I kind of doubt that that's going to happen. I am leaning bearish, but it could test blue zone, which is H4. It could test red zones, which is daily and H4 within it. And I'm expecting some sort of rejection. So just to indicate my bias, you know, it would be something like this and that. So break or bounce there. Above this zone is going to go up. I would not take that trade. So you'll notice that I do this. If I wouldn't do it, it's just I anticipate it would go up, but I wouldn't look for a long. Here we have another break or bounce scenario there. And this one, I would start to change my bias, not look for an immediate trade, but I would change my bias if we broke that daily supply zone. And then obviously below these current lows, we would anticipate that this thing has just got a ton of orders and momentum, and it's just going to keep on pushing down. There you go. GBPUSD. So this one, interesting, definitely feeling bearish on this 100% now, even more so. And here's why. Go to your monthly chart. we see that we broke monthly demand here after tapping into a previous area of major high time frame supply. And we've just been pushing down super hard, right? Now, what do we see on the weekly? What's our trend? What can you spot here? Well, we've been cascading lower and lower, strong level of supply, tapped, and then we get a 2-week bearish rejection from that level. Sellers are in control, y'all. Now, this is our lower low of this overall trend, and I've marked that out for the daily. Let's go look at that real quick. This gray box represents your current daily flow leg. This is what you want to trade with overall. Now, again, I need to see a pullback. This is going to be a very common theme for us as we start this week, start this month. We need to see a pullback relative to this so we can look for bearish continuation opportunities. You would know if that was going to happen once we break our H4 level of supply. If this keeps going down from right here, we have a new level of H4 supply. We'll slide these 2 lines down with it. But as you can see, I've marked out break or bounce scenarios at all of these zones. So here, I wouldn't take the long. I would expect that we might have bearish pressure, but if we break it, we'll start that retracement, right? Green means start the retracement there. Then I would look to maybe watch our daily supply zone. This is where we saw the last major daily push from. This is the top of the overall daily leg, this gray box, polyline box here. Also represents your weekly supply. So this would be a strong area of selling if we saw 100% retracement relative to that. Then we get into kind of no man's land green up here. I wouldn't be catching any trades in that region, and I would be long bias above it that I would start to look for trades on. Overall, I'm leaning down on this pair, and these eyeballs indicate areas that I'm interested in for potential retracements and trade opportunities. I'm looking for shorts at least below this flow low or into this red demand zone. And if you go back up to that high time frame, that weekly, if we break below this thing, we got swings for days, like somewhere deep. Okay, so bearish bias on this for me this week. I'm going to stick to that. We may see a retracement, but overall, just because I say I have a bearish bias doesn't mean that I don't anticipate we need some sort of retracement. We know that's how the market works, right? Sellers are in control. At some point, they're going to take profit or need more orders. They got to refuel the car to keep it pushing. So we're going to need that at some point, and that's when we get a trade opportunity to ride along with them. Same deal with GBPJPY. Now this one I don't really like. I'll be totally honest with you. I have a note here. I have very mixed opinions on GJ for now. If I were to consider any trade opportunities, it would be my based on intraweek flow, and it would be managed pretty conservatively or pretty aggressively. Here's why. This was a big push to the upside, right? Then price came all the way back down, 100% retracement. We see bullish pressure. But price has now failed to break this higher high, this weekly supply zone, our high time frame trend high here. And we're kind of just making a consolidation range, right? I was leaning bullish on this pair, but we failed to break that supply level. So interesting, right? Now we're seeing a switch of flow. We got this daily break of flow right here, and sellers are clearly in control. So my immediate bias would be based off of this bearish flow after the gray higher time frame weekly flow here. Right now on our H4 and our daily, I think that overall sellers are in control. I would look for a retracement potentially into one of these 2 eyeballs here. But it's pretty messy. So, I mean, I would need a lot of reason to get into this right now. I don't necessarily want to force any trades here. We do have an H4 break of flow. So this could mark that our retracement relative to this gray line, our daily leg, has started. If that's the case, we could watch for any areas of interest within this where we can identify some major supply and potentially look for a pro trend or pro flow bearish continuation opportunity. Now, again, we kind of have started a retracement. It's a little bit messy. So this one's not really on the radar for me this week. I would rather look at AUGU, NASDAQ that I do in the mornings with my group and gold. So I'm going to move on to the next one, EURJPY. Now, here we go. This one I want to look at the monthly. And what do you see? Again, sellers are in major control. We came into a level of supply. We got this rejection, huge orders, huge volumes start to come in. Look at the weekly, definitely trending down. Last week, we extended that trend significantly, lots of orders. Look for bearish continuations. Pretty much everything on my list right now is look for bearish continuations, but we're going to need a retracement in order to do that. So what areas are we immediately interested in? Let's look at the daily. This is your H4 leg. It's also, where we see our major daily supply. I would watch your H4 supply, I would watch your daily supply, and then I would watch this daily lower high. This is a point of structure here. You could get a retracement all the way back into this and still maintain a bearish bias, but above that, your bias changes. So that's my high time frame levels for this time frame. Let's go to the H4, get a little detail here. And here's my directional bias, right? Potentially, I would look for transition and shorts from H4 supply if my entry signals told me so. If we break below the high time frame trend low, I'm expecting this thing to keep pushing downwards. We do need some sort of retracement. It looks like we might be starting that. This is a very weak level of supply, but it was the level that gave you the last H4 push to the downside. So maybe we start this retracement now. Maybe we see this thing pull back up into this zone or this daily supply zone here. If it breaks both of these, then I wouldn't look for the long. I would just watch these levels and set my alerts on higher. So again, need a retracement, looking for short continuations. That brings us down to EURJPY. And this one is a little ugly, but I love the highest time frame story. From May 2020 into June-ish 2021, we saw this huge bullish uptrend. In my opinion, we are in a retracement relative to this push on the monthly. And we can see that we've been in this heavy bearish weekly flow. So I've got a short bias, but I want to be acutely aware that I have this level over here, right? This is an area where if I'm selling into it, I want to just be super careful, right? Super careful. This is a level of structure as well, in my opinion, but we have one slightly higher here. Major level to watch here is what I'm trying to get at. 1, 2. I'm leaning bearish on this overall. It looks like we have put in some new orders and we're going to try and extend this trend. So maybe, just maybe, we can get in on an intraday opportunity to catch a short and ride this trend into new lows below 127,330-ish. Here's the kicker. We are seeing at the end of this week, really the mid to end of this week, just a bunch of BS consolidation, right? This thing's moving sideways. You got nothing to do right now. We need to wait for the range to break. There's no immediate bias that we can hold. If we break to the downside, then we may see a break or bounce scenario on that trend lower low, like these arrows indicate. You could look for a long bounce here, but overall, I'm looking for shorts still. Up to you. If we break above this level, we're going to see the retracement relative to that weekly flow leg begin. I think this is a strong level of H4 supply here. This is what really gave you the last push to the downside right there. To the front. There we go. So that would be an area that I would watch as well. And then sort of your daily supply, which is right up here. Right there. You could even tighten that up a little bit to that. And those are my two areas that I would look for potential trades from. So I'm looking for a retracement into one of these and then intraday bearish transition for a short opportunity that I would swing into potentially new lows. And that's really it, guys. High time frame ideas, high time frame reasoning, building the narrative, using sensible logic, and just being patient. We need some retracements. We're looking for bearish continuations. And that's really about it. So listen, if you got some value from this, if you learned something from this, give me a thumbs up. Don't be that person. Whoever you are, I still love you. Subscribe if you don't already. Share this with your friends, right? Like, I'm not trying to just do some bullshit marketing, a fluff product. This does help people. And I'm trying to put products out there that will continue to help people. So on that note, as always, be smart, trade safe, and have fun. I'll see you next week.